time. We're uncaged.
Welcome to Topple Uncaged. I'm Steve Topple and you're locked on to the UK's hottest politics and music podcast. Each week I bring you the rawest takes on the big stories making the news, always joined by a very special guest. Then I pleasure your mind, body and soul with the freshest, most banging international music going.
Uncaged.
Well, maybe three little birds. Three little birds, yeah.
I have nothing to say about this man except abuse of tea.
I can tell you the price of a bottle of champagne. How about that? Singing, this is my message.
There we go.
My guest on today's show is one half of the hottest hip-hop duo in the country. I've had them on the podcast before. It was a real pleasure chatting to them. And it's even more of a pleasure chatting to one half of them now because they are dropping this fantastic new track with slight political overtones. Just a whiff of politics in there. And they have got loads of other stuff going on. I'm so pleased to have, well, him back on the podcast. The other member of this group is otherwise a bit busy, but he is here. It is Ross from the fantastic hip-hop duo Too Many T's. Ross, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast. It's like having an old friend back on chatting to you.
Oh, mate, I'm just going to keep coming on for introductions like that, you bloody legend.
Well, do you know what it is? It's funny, I was thinking about this when I said to you guys, will you come on the podcast? And that, part of the reason I actually started doing this podcast and started doing the music was because to give a platform to musicians who quite often the mainstream press ignore for whatever reason, but also so there was a platform available so guests could keep coming back on and have somewhere they know they could go to promote their work whenever they had something out. So, and you and Loki, as it happens, are the sort of first guests who've been back on twice. So it's what I was aiming for, was to have somewhere where people could come, and if they want to promote their work, then there was always an open door with me. So it's lovely to have you back on.
Oh, mate, esteemed company as well. Loki, what a legend.
he is a legend, yes, but that's for, we could do a whole show on him, but that's for another show. Back to you guys. Anyway, I love this so much. I saw, it was our mutual friends, the hemp trading company, who pointed me to this after a certain incident in sort of North London, where a certain politician had a knock from the police, and a certain rapper was standing next door, sort of singing a few verses. You've got this brilliant new track out, which is a rap about Boris Johnson, nonetheless. Yeah. We'll get into the sort of backstory of it in a minute, but you've got this track out. It's absolutely brilliant. I love it, as I always love all your stuff. It is laid back hip hop perfection. It's gorgeous. It's straight to the point, and always with you, it's got these brilliant elements of humour embedded within it. There's some absolutely fantastic lines in there about obviously his hair and his what was it about his jaw that's his
ever flapping jaw.
His ever flapping jaw. It's lyrically perfection. But what you've done, and I have to say, what you've also done, which is a brilliant move both musically and artistically, is you've got this humorous rap, hip hop beats going on, sort of the snare and the hi-hat, usual procedure. But then towards the end you go into this devastating sort of serious spoken word section where you don't rap as it is, well, for me it is spoken word, and you sort of reel off all his horrendous misdemeanors, and it's absolutely brilliant because you take the listener through this voyage of humour, and then suddenly you hit them with this really serious shit, and it is serious shit. You talk about what you said, comments about dead bodies in Libya. You talk about £350 million on the side of a bus, and it just finishes the track perfectly because it makes such a strong point. I think it's extremely clever what you've done. I mean, I have to ask, why now have you chosen to drop this? Has he been pissing you off? Has he been playing playing Bach too loudly at 2 o'clock in the morning next door to you, and you've had enough?
Awesome. If it had been playing Bach, he could. Yeah. Well,
why have you dropped it now?
Yeah, so we got back off tour at end of April, and then it wasn't until he'd been living next door to me, so it's in South London in Camberwell.
Beg your pardon, that's right.
And it'd been living next door to me for since December, but we were away, so I never knew, and then And then, yeah, literally, like, the track's really, really literal. And I came outside my house. I was on the way to a festival in May, and there was all these paparazzi, and I was like, what's going on? Like, and they're like, don't you know who lives next door to you? And I was like, no, I've lived here for 9 years. Like, who lives next door to me? And then they told me, and I was like, what? This is surreal. Boris Johnson lives there. Like, what? This is weird, man. So for the next, like, couple of weeks, I just, in my spare time, I started writing a few bars about it and like started the rap, and I thought, you know, I might put this out at some point. I'll just like squirrel away at it and just do little bits and bobs. And and I was just coming home one day from the studio, and there was all the paparazzi outside. This is like last Friday, and they started asking me questions. Did you hear anything about this row that happened? Like, him and his girlfriend had a domestic. And I was like, no, I don't know anything about it. There was like 50 of them there, you know, like it was big things. And they were like, what do you think about him? And I was like, well, I don't think much of him. In fact, I think a lot about him, actually, but both, not much and a lot. I've started a rap about it, and they were like, and then they also like looked really interested. And I was like, and they were like, can you do as a rendition of the rap about it? And I was like, well, yeah, all right, I suppose so. And then they all gathered round, and then so I just like performed this, like what I had at the start was just like this little 8-bar thing, and then it sort of got shared a lot on Facebook and Twitter, and I think it's up to like 90,000 views now or something. And
Excellent.
I've had lots of messages, lots of like hate, which I've never really had before, so it's been quite interesting. And like, and not lots of hate, to be fair. A lot of like people laughing and calling me a hero, which is awesome. So I just thought I'll just finish it and make a proper tune out of it. And then when I was writing it, I was like, you know, I don't want to make this too silly, and I kind of took some lines out. I was kind of poking fun at him a bit about his appearance, and I kind of took that out a little bit and toned that down. And then I started reading a lot more about his misdemeanors. Like, I knew about some of them, but I didn't notice the extent of it. And then I read some articles like from like his old boss at a paper he worked at about his like just incompetence and how he kind of flip-flops his kind of beliefs. And then this has sort of been prevalent all the way through his career. Lots of people have said it. And then I was like, wow. And I was like, do you know what? This is interesting because everyone thinks he's super kind of just silly and goofy. Yeah, you know, he's got like the sort of Tory mentality. We all know that. He's sort of part of a club. But it's really interesting how he plays it. So that's what I tried to do in the song. I was trying to be like, you know, so that he's goofy and then all his silly things, and then be like, wait a minute, but he's my next door neighbour. I can get him around for dinner and get to know him properly, and then I'll ask him all these things that I've read, and then it reels off, and it's literally just like a list of like 10 articles that I found and Caroline Lucas's tweets. You know, it's all just stuff that's there, and I just kind of reeled it off, and then it just got to the point where I was like, it needs to make more impact, so I just started listing them off and kind of took the beat out. And it just brings it to this point where at the end it's like, but he's a character, and then back into the fun hook. So it's, you know, it's like a metaphor for the whole situation of the song, you know.
You summed up brilliant. I mean, that is exactly what you have done. And as I said, it's a stroke of genius. It's so well crafted, and even more impressive that you sort of had some sparse lyrics, and then just after events that happened, you've turned it around and turned it into a complete track. And you've got the point across, the fact that he comes across sort of bumbling and a bit goofy and a bit kooky and a bit eccentric, when actually it's a caricature he's created for himself. Almost,
yeah, I think so. You know, and like, you know, I mean, he might have a side of him that's quite safe and funny to get on with. You know, like I could imagine like it being a bit of a laugh, and I've had, you know, like, but what he's said and what he does and what he stands for or doesn't stand for is all there for you to see as well. You know, and that's a huge character flaw, and some of it's just like is unbelievable that he might be the Prime Minister. You know, so. It is staggering, isn't it? It's unbelievable that I might be writing a full takedown song about the next prime minister who lives next door. The whole thing's a bit surreal.
When you put it in those terms, Ross, it is. It's very surreal, actually. I can't even begin to imagine. I mean, briefly, because I do want to talk about the sort of the political landscape in this country in a minute. But briefly, has it been a challenge turning it around this quickly?
Yeah, man. Yeah. It's just been a little bit stressful. We're just sort of, I don't know, like me and Leon kind of do this. If we get sort of something that we want to do, we'll just do it until it's done, sort of all around the clock, you know. So it's just been one of those, man. You just sometimes like pull all-nighters, and it's all a bit stressful, but you know, I think it'll be worth it. And I kind of want to get it done and out there now, and then kind of get on with my normal life and making normal music, you know.
There is nothing normal about your music, Ross. Thank you very much. But we'll come on to that later. But I think you're right. You need to get it out there now, because not least because the timing is so pertinent with everything that's going on in the minute. And I think, I mean, again, especially with a lot of sort of hip hop and reggae music, which I feature quite heavily, what's so brilliant about it is it's completely accessible as well to a sort of audience which may not be politically engaged necessarily, because of the sort of hip hop beat and the fact you rap and etc. 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 So I think timing is crucial on this. I mean, you touched on how surreal it is to be living next door to Boris Johnson, who could be the Prime Minister, who quite likely will be the Prime Minister. I mean, there's a brilliant fucking anecdote about the fact you literally came home and suddenly you realise Boris Johnson's your neighbour. I mean, that has to go down with kind of Michael Parkinson kind of anecdotes worthy for any chat show, I have to say. That's one for my record books. But it is surreal, and we are, as a country, we're now in this position where 124,000 members of a right-wing political party are going to be choosing between Boris Johnson and Jeremy Hunt as the next Prime Minister. I mean, it's a staggering state of affairs in all seriousness. I mean, how, just briefly, in your sort of political opinion, how have we got to this point where we've ended up as a nation stuck with these two as future Prime Minister, with no say-so from any of us anyway?
Yeah. It's completely crazy, and it's really sad, and it's really sad that we're talking about this and talking about Brexit all this time, you know, when there's like proper issues in the world, like the environmental crisis is something that like should just be the literally the hot topic. But yeah, man, it's so draining. Like I find the whole thing, and I think it's kind of come about by, you know, this sort of drive for power, and whether it's cyclical in the way that, you know, there's these sort of rises of right wing. I'm not sure, but the whole last 100 years or 200 years, you can't really call it cyclical because everything's changed completely. You know, like the whole way that we operate as a society, and everything's completely changed in technology, and there's twice as many people, and it's just allowed people to exploit. There's always these people, you know, that are trying to exploit people, and they've managed to do that to a certain extent, I think, and get a rise out of people. And, you know, with like people like Steve Bannon and Analytica and things like that get behind certain things. I find that a lot of sort of heavy far right wing people that are really driven are much more ruthless in their quest for power, and that's kind of, you know, it gives them a sort of edge in a way to like get into positions. And then, you know, people like Boris, I don't even think he is like, you know, sort of mega far right in a way. I think he's a bit more central, but he'll do whatever he can to be popular, you know. So he kind of jumps on the bandwagon like a lot of politicians do. They want to say the right thing, and that's where it comes down to actually not standing for anything, which is just, oh man, yeah, it's so gutting, because like you just always think like, oh wow, society could be so nice. Like we've got everything there. We've got like we could manage the environmental crisis. We could like so many people. There wouldn't have to be poverty. All these things are all solvable. We've got all the resources, all the money, everything we need, and it's kind of, you can see it just being taken away by greed in front of your eyes, and it's super sad.
No, you're spot on, and I think you made two very important points there. Firstly, you're correct. I agree with you. Boris Johnson ain't some sort of far right figure as such. I mean, I find that the left in particular tend to overuse the word fascist without sort of any real concept of what it really means. Boris Johnson is a fascist. He's got some very unpleasant views and is a nasty, bigoted old racist. But I wouldn't go as far to say he's a fascist. And I think you're right. He's just riding a wave of sort of right-wing populism at the minute. But I also think it's very important when you picked out that these things are cyclic, as it were. They are, in terms of what always happens is, and it's happened throughout our history as a species since sort of the early civilizations 6,000, 7,000 years ago, that we tend to live in hierarchies where a few people are in power and to the detriment of the rest of us. And we're just in another phase of that at the moment. The illness is always the same. It's just the symptoms are sometimes very different, and the symptoms at the minute are corporations and politicians power hungry and hell bent on destroying the planet in the process. So
this is it, man. This is why, like, because there's always obviously hope, and there's so many like grassroots movements, and there's lots of happiness to be had. It's not all doom and gloom, but I just feel like the environmental crisis at the moment, it kind of we kind of need something to change pretty soon, and for that to happen, the political landscape needs to change, because we don't want to be reacting, because I don't think we can, like, from what I've read, so yeah, it kind of it's pretty heavy, yeah.
You're correct, and that is the challenge. I mean, we've been here countless times throughout history before, but what's so different this time is, as you say, the environmental, the sort of climate and ecological catastrophe that's unfolding before our very eyes. That hasn't happened in the history of human civilization before, and if that doesn't inspire the will for change, then we're pretty fucked as a species, if you ask me, if we can't get it together now. But let's try and reel this back to something more positive, because while that's all important stuff, you guys meanwhile have been very busy. The first time actually to talk about the environment, the first time I found you, the two of you, was when you were doing a track for the Bees last year, which is absolutely stunning. I'll link to it in the show notes. Brilliant track. And this year, 2019, you have been, where have you been? Tell the listeners, because you've been on tour and you've been like the other side of the world, essentially, haven't you?
Yeah, we did never really sort of done the traveling thing, me and Leon, but we got so a gig in Australia, so we went out to Australia and then managed to get a few more gigs there, then shouted out just to our network on Facebook, and managed to get some gigs in Southeast Asia, then finally in India. So over I think it was over 4 months, we did about 20-25 shows just through this route, kind of like the old like gap year route in a way, but with India added on. So we called the tour Rap Year. We're pretty happy with that name.
I love that. That's brilliant. Literally through your social media, you were organising gigs. I think that's absolutely great. It must be great for the fans to feel involved as well in the respect of it.
Yeah, just people linked us in. We were just like any sort of venues, promoters or agencies, and I think we got about 300 people tagged in for all around the whole sort of side of the world, basically. And then so we contacted all them, and then they put us in touch with other people, and we just contacted so many people, and so we ended up with enough paid gigs that we could do the trip. We did it proper bare bones, and we were kind of traveling by any means necessary, and but we did it, man, and it was beautiful, and it was like really, yeah, we kind of. It's nice taking a step out of London for that long, because I've not done it for been in London 9 years now, and never really just got away from that background noise, and so it was really nice to actually chill out, and we wrote the start of 2 new albums while we were out there as well as all the gigs. So yeah, it was absolutely beautiful, man.
What have you got lined up, just to finish this off, Ross? What have you got lined up for the rest of 2019? So Glastonbury Thursday and Friday, and you're jet setting off to Berlin. Boris track is dropping. Is there going to be an album out?
There is going to be.
Hey!
There's going to be an album. So
when?
November the 1st. Remember
that
the 1st of November. Yeah.
Excellent.
And it's an interesting one, man. It's we played a lot in France last year. Got out to France. We've got a label out there, released our album South City in France, and then we've been working with them on this new record, and it's a full collaborative album. So there's 10 tracks, all with different French artists. So like there's 15 artists altogether. So we've got some guest vocalists, lots of different producers from like Chinese Man, like A State of Mind, Chill Bumper on there, Kassim Wapalek, who's this really famous French rapper who's incredible. So it's a real mix of all different people and kind of different styles as well, man. It's super. We've been sort of tying it all together slowly, and it's just coming together now. We got a few more weeks left to finish it, and it's sounding good.
That is so exciting. I cannot wait to have an album from you guys. I think that's going to be absolutely stunning, I'm sure. As is Boris Rap. It's like I say, it's absolutely brilliant. The timing is perfect, and the track itself is perfection as well. So I would urge listeners to go and get that. All the links will be in the show notes to the track along with the video. Ross, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast. It's always great fun to chat to you. You're such a lovely guy, and it's always great fun. And please say hello to Leon for me as well.
Will do, man. Absolute pleasure, Steve. Thanks for the support, man. You're a legend. No
problems. And you're coming back on in November when the album drops.
Boom. Today.
Ross, Too Many Teas, thank you so much.
Big love.
I love Too Many Teas. They're great. And thank you so much, Ross, for coming on the podcast. And I cannot wait for the new album to drop in November. That is going to be awesome. But anyway, here it is, their latest track, and it's a good one. And the timing is extremely pertinent as well. It is Too Many Teas with Boris Next Door. Too Many Teas, Boris Next Door.
Boris, he lives next door with his big floppy hair and his ever flapping jaw. Boris, he lives next door. There's a bike outside, but his money's offshore. Boris, he lives next door. I asked for some sugar, but he said I'm too poor. Boris might come knocking on my door, but Boris Johnson was never meant to be let loose on the human kind. I was heading to a festival and getting in my car when I saw a load of guys must be waiting for a star. There was cameras in the hand, and mama must have made it large, cause the paparazzi's here, but those flashes didn't start. Then I heard a bumble grumble, I turned and early stumbled. I thought it was a womble, but it's worse, that Tory dum-dum. Blonde hair, backpack, nice bike, tight cast. Boris Johnson's moved in, right next to my gaff. What do I do? I asked my friends on Facey, they said throw a rave, or egg that grown baby. But why do that? He seems like such a nice guy. I mean, he used to smoke weed and he likes to score a try. He's the king of eating mumble rap and likes to down a pint with that goofy charm and wit. Tim, nice but dim vibes. Well, that's what it seems. I mean, I need to get to know him. Invite him round for dinner, see what really gets him going. I'll do a Sunday roast, that's a national dish. Then I'll ask a few cues and do a factual fish. Like, how did he get to 350 mil a week? Is his calculator broke or is his maths just weak? Because it seemed to add up fine when they needed DUP, but really didn't work to find cash for OAPs. And why has he voted for every single war? Do his friends have some shares in selling weapons or what?
Hello?
And does he really think that women can't control emotions? And why does he really hate foxes? And why does he change his mind seemingly at random? Like 1 year pro-EU, the next to Brexit hard man. And why is he friends with that fascist Steve Bannon? Or think it's okay to say women wearing burqas look like letterboxes? Or use his Telegraph column to cast doubt on climate change? Or think it's okay to joke about clearing away Libyan dead bodies? Or why almost everything he seems to do and say is for his own personal gain and not for the people he's supposed to be working for, us, the British people, who he seems to lie to every time he opens his mouth? But he's a character. Boris, he lives next door with his big floppy hair and his ever flapping jaw. Boris, he lives next door. There's a bike outside, but his money's offshore. Boris, he lives next door. I asked for some sugar, but he said I'm too poor. Boris might come knocking on my door, but Boris Johnson was never meant to be let loose on the humankind.
And that's it. This very special episode of Topple Uncaged is done. I'd like to thank my fantastic guests this week, the incredible Ross from Too Many Teas. Follow them on Twitter, it's at Too Many Teas. As always, behind the scenes, thank you to the love of my life, the gorgeous Nicola Jeffrey. Follow her on Twitter, it's at Nicholas C. Jeffrey. My man behind the booth, sound engineer Gav Pause. Follow him on Twitter, it's at Pause with the Z Radio. And my in-house singer, it's Ray Star Music. Follow her on Twitter, it's at Ray_Star113. Thank you to the Canary for uncaging me. I will see you next week.
Uncaged.